Welcome back to the podcast. Today I'm joined in studio by the main man himself, who may have forgotten to press record. So just a quick one. We have been talking for 35 minutes.
So I'll fill in for George here. We've been recording for 35 minutes, or so we thought. One of the greatest conversations ever recorded on this podcast.
I thought so too.
Did not get recorded.
Yep.
So here we are, round 2.
We go again.
Yes, we do.
So Owen, today we're talking all things community.
Yes.
Do you want to give a quick snapshot of the Rask Group and I guess how we're here?
Yeah, sure. So hopefully this one's better than the first one we just recorded off air. So the Rask Group attracts around 150 to 250,000 unique podcast listeners. It started in 2016, 2017. We've got 33,000 students that have enrolled in our courses, 50 to 60,000 newsletter readers. We don't do a lot of socials, which is a good conversation. But we've built the business up and we've kind of leveraged into financial education, investment research, financial advice, and so many other things now, George. And it's great. We've predominantly been doing it online, although, and when I say an online business, but nowadays we have effectively 2 different sides of the business. We've got the traditional media, podcast, newsletter, courses, online stuff. But then we also have what we call services. So services are things like connecting with financial planners or our own financial advisors, getting accounting advice, mortgage broking, investment management. So there's things that we actually provide to our community that we haven't in the past are now a reality. And I love it. It's a great business. Here we are in 2025. We've been going for 6 or 7 years. It's been a hell of a ride.
Yeah, good stuff. In those 6 or 7 years, have you ever forgot to press record before?
I have forgot to press record maybe once before. Okay. So it's a podium finish for us already.
Good stuff.
Yeah, mate.
Good stuff. Can you share with us how you started the Rask Group and what pushed you to focus on the financial education side and building a community?
So when I started the business, I was pretty frustrated by, you'd go to the CommBank website, you click on the link that says education, and it would be education about that particular product or thing that they're trying to sell you. No shade, or maybe just a little bit of shade on CommBank, but I was frustrated that people who really needed to learn about finance and money, the only real avenues to do that were from big organizations that really thought that education was, I'm going to educate you on the things that I'm selling you, which is, to be honest, that's just marketing. Yeah. It's not education. So I was frustrated by that and I wanted to do something about that. And so we had, videos that we created. We did stuff on YouTube. We wrote articles and blog posts and that sort of thing. And then over time, it snowballed and we went from SEO to podcasts, courses, accounts, community type things. It just transformed again and again and again. And everything that we did, every vertical that we went from, we used to seed a new one.
Yeah, cool.
And here we are today.
Cool. At what point did you realize that building a community of loyal followers was crucial to the whole group's success?
So I think what I have figured out is that every business has a community around them.
Yep.
And I've used the example of Costco before, which has about a 92% retention rate. If you go into their financial statements, you will see that virtually all of the profit from Costco comes from their memberships, which are now $60 or $65. And that just gives you a ticket to the warehouse, right? And Costco is a place that prides itself on adding value, not being the cheapest. That's an important distinction. So what they effectively say is Costco is for good value, not necessarily good prices. They would say great value at good prices, whereas Aldi would be cheap, is how I would distinguish that. And so if you go to Costco, you can get 2 kilos of peanut butter, but it will be the best peanut butter. Whereas if you go to Aldi, you'll still get really good peanut butter, but it just won't be the one that you know. And so there's a really important distinction there. Effectively, what they do is they take the membership and the community, aka community, and they use the community to fund their actual business. but every bit of profit that's made on the products just gets reinvested into better products. And it kind of creates this vicious flywheel where over time, they get more members because the products are good. The products are good, so they get more members. And the products get better and they get more members. And it just keeps this inherent cycle going. Another one is Bunnings, where you get the sausage sizzle. At a Bunnings warehouse, you'll see like the $2, or now it's like $3, I guess, for a sausage. It's the local Lions Club, it's a school, it's a charity, it's a footy club, and they invite all their supporters down. And people like me that thought, I'll just go support them, get a sausage or help them out, end up walking out with $500 worth of random stuff for the house that you just didn't expect to buy. Like Bunnings have mastered community as well. And so if you look around you, there are so many different businesses that exist in your world that you were like, well, it's not a community. I would be like, hell yeah, it is. It's a community. It just happens to be surrounding a for-profit business in the middle. And you don't have to be Costco to do this, like a $500 billion company. You could be like a local real estate agent that supports all of the local sporting clubs, which a lot of them do, because you try and, maybe that's more like infiltrate the local communities, but you're trying to like build and foster a network around you. And that is like pure organic marketing. And it is the way that you create a wonderful business where your customer acquisition cost, which is sometimes shortened to CAC, CAC, is lower than anyone else's because you dial into what the community cares about. And I wanted to share a story with you, which is that there's a famous story about the founder of Costco offering the $2 hot dog and drink, which is like the best part of going to Costco, other than like the free samples. There's a story that goes, the CFO, the chief financial officer, walked in to the founder in the boardroom and said, we need to increase the price of these hot dogs. They are running at a loss. Like, we are losing money on every hot dog we sell. And the founder goes, if you increase the price of the hot dogs, I will fucking kill you. Right? And the reality is that was so important to the values of that business and that community that they would never have increased the prices. And you can, if you think I'm talking smack, you can go and Google this for yourself, or you can read it in the Equity Mates book, Don't Stress, Just Invest. There's a little page on it, a little blurb, but it highlights the value of their community and staying true to their values of what that community represents. Like, great products, good prices. I'm sure you could find a cheaper hot dog than $2 somewhere in the world, but is it a Costco hot dog with a Coke? No.
True. In one of the greatest podcast episodes that never was, which we just recorded or didn't record, we spoke about Robert Cialdini and his principle of authority, which I know you're a big fan of him and his books. What role does that perceived authority play when earning trust, and especially in that in the finance game? Yeah.
So I realized I didn't fully answer your previous question. When I'll come back to Cialdini,
sure.
But when we kind of knew. So last year in 2024, we launched an investment platform. It's called Rask Invest. And it's basically a way that you can invest with us if you trust us enough. And what's been really interesting about that is when Mitchell, who heads up that part of the business, Mitchell came to me and he said, Owen, the people who invest with us are not going to be people that listen to the podcast. And I was like, that doesn't sound very compelling. What do you mean? And he said, because they've already got their investing sorted. They're fine. But you know who it's going to be? It's going to be their friends and their family members. And I was like, well, that kind of makes a lot of sense. He's like, because most people that want to invest in something like we're creating are not people that listen to a finance podcast, but they never will. They'll never go into search results and Google what is the best ETF, where a Rask article might pop up. They're never going to go and attend a finance event. They're never going to do that. So how do we reach the people that need the product? The answer is the community. So if you trust us enough, you don't have to invest with us. But what we see is that the people who trust us recommend us to so many more people. And if you love what we've done, if we've helped you invest better or manage your money better or improved your relationship with your partner or your family and in doing so money as well. Of course, if your friend comes up to you and says, hey, Jordan, where am I going to invest? You just say, we'll go to Rask. I trust that they'll do the right thing, and we will. And so what we've seen is a lot of kids' accounts open up for like parents and grandparents are like, they still love their stocks, like their BHP and stuff, but they're like, my kids aren't going to want this. So I'm going to get the guys that I trust to do it for me, which is us. And that was when I kind of really knew. And trust, and this speaks to Cialdini's work, is effectively what we found in our data is that I think depending on who you compare us to, we might even have the average balance of someone that invests with us might even be 4 or 5 times as high as like a competitor. And although it's still small right now, what we're seeing, and we've talked about this before because you basically counseled me through this whole process, is many people start with like a $20,000 investment. But really what we know is that's just a token amount of trust. It's them saying, we want to support you. I'm going to see how this goes. But if you took that same person today that joins up with a $20,000 investment with us, our average is over 80,000.
Yep.
So I would sure, we've got some big investors, but really most people will move to that. And that's just a really good tangible point of like, what can we do through trust and authority? And so you mentioned like Robert Cialdini, Professor Robert Cialdini is like a lord of, not finance, a lord of marketing and psychology. There's like a really wicked combination going on inside that man's brain. And the idea of authority comes from this principle that's effectively like, if someone has authority, you're more likely to be persuaded by them. And so I've got a story for people, which is from Kate Morris, who's the founder of Adore Beauty. They just opened their first big flagship store, like a physical store. And yeah, wish them all the best with that. But what Kate did in the early days is she was blogging like crazy about skincare products, which is what Adore sells. She was featured in lots and lots of magazines, newspapers, all that stuff. And what Kate did was she basically became an authority on that particular topic. And eventually this community, which now we call followers, coalesced around her and said, well, if it's good enough for Kate, I'll just have that one, please. And so effectively what's happened in Adore Beauty, which is an e-commerce business that I think it still runs on off-the-shelf software. Like it's not Shopify, but it's something, I keep forgetting what it is. Marketo maybe? I don't know. But effectively, she created this brand that, yeah, sure, it gave you some Tim Tams when you got your moisturizer delivered. But she took kind of that personal authority and leveraged it into a skincare business. And now it's, I don't know, I haven't kept up with it lately, but it'd have to be in the hundreds of millions of dollars, I'd imagine. And if you think about that in terms of your business and what you're trying to build, like most of us could do that even if it's not huge like Adore Beauty, you could do that in any business. Like you do a lot of SEO with Grayspace and it works really well. Someone that, has a local, I don't know, hairdressing thing might have an Instagram channel or following. And there's so many ways that you can leverage that now, and you can effectively build authority on a particular topic. And you don't need a huge community. Something I haven't told you before was I spoke to someone this week, George, and what they said, they had this really interesting data point, which they found in their community. And what they found was that 10% of the people who sign up for something for free will go on to pay. Of that 10%, a further 10% would pay them 10 times as much. And they realized that they could keep doing this. There were diminishing returns, but they realized that they could keep doing this same formula and refining and refining and refining and refining. And you would have this like incredible, like kind of like power law, if you will, that was like effectively you get to a certain point and the people that pay you so much more. And you can keep refining your community to get to a point where you have a really, really good service and you don't need that many people. There's books like 1,000 Raving Fans or something like that. You don't need 100,000 podcast listeners. You probably only need a few hundred to build a really good business. And, I'll give a good example of that is we used to have a Facebook account, a Facebook community. It wasn't as big as some of our competitors, but we didn't really take it that seriously. It was just a really convenient way for people to join. And we closed it down. We just flat out closed it down. It was like, we're kind of sick of it. We didn't really want to be in that space. And while the community was fun, we didn't want people coming in and pumping and dumping stocks or talking about their crypto and all that kind of crap. That's fine that you do those things, but what it would mean is that if someone interacted with the Rask brand, even though it's on a Facebook thing and it's kind of open, they might have a really bad experience with that. Yeah. And so we couldn't control that. We couldn't control what the 1,001 community member comes in and talks about on the Facebook community. So now, if you want to be a community member of Rask, like actually contribute and like comment and stuff, you can just listen, which is what most people do, or read or whatever. It's lovely. But you can't comment on anything unless you create a free account. And it takes you maybe 60 seconds, maybe a couple of minutes, depending on how much you want to set up. But the amount of people that has kept out of our community has been amazing. So that the existing community, the super community members, know that they're kind of in a safe space. And for us, we would rather have 1,000 amazing community members than 10,000 absolute cowboys and cowgirls on Facebook talking about Lord knows what, because we want to control the brand messaging and we want to control the community to the point where it's a safe space and people can still trust that it represents the brand. Because the moment that you lose that, there's this real asymmetric thing in my industry, George, which is if you have one bad actor, it can just annihilate the entire business. Yeah. So most finance businesses respond to that with, we've got to bring in all these rules, no social media, can't talk about that, no individual voice, run it by compliance 6 times before you actually post that thing in the mail or whatever the case may be. That's why it just stifles creativity. So what we try to do is we try and run by values and we try to contain as much as we can contain, but allow the community to understand those values and to be yeah. And that's why if you go into a community now, shout out to Fraser, one of our community members. So many amazing community members. But he currently holds the record in our community of reporting the most posts as not in line with the values. But because we use Circle software, which is the same as what we use in Inflection, what actually happens is there's a leaderboard. And depending on your status in that leaderboard, if you're near the top and you report something, you're not a moderator, but in effect you are, because it effectively takes your credibility and then it will automatically hide the thing until it's reviewed by an administrator.
Yeah, right.
So the community is effectively protecting itself as it grows. And the people who are more credible in the community get more recognition, and effectively they don't even know, but they can protect more of the community value.
Yeah, wow.
And people don't know that that's a feature or what it does. But if you think about that, that's amazing.
Yeah, it is.
And it
self-moderates.
Yeah, exactly. And you don't ever get that in Facebook. You have to appoint a moderator, and even then, easy come, easy go, right?
Yeah, that's right. In your view, how does a founder's personal values trickle into the brand?
So good question. There's the gravitational field of a business. The closer you go to the middle, the more powerful that should be.
Yeah.
And when I say should be, it's not so much as should be, it's just it is. So the business owner or the founder has to embody the values, right? Because the next layer beyond that person is typically the team, or maybe there's a layer of management. And it's like cordial that you pour in. Every extra bit of water that you pour into that cordial, the more diluted it will get. So you need to be really mindful that the bigger your organization grows, the less opportunity there is, the greater the opportunity there is for more of your values to be diluted. So I'll give you a good example of this. Something I'm not particularly proud of is we were in the office a few weeks ago, and I made a particular comment about one of our community members, it wasn't in a derogatory way, it wasn't a bad thing, but I was I really shouldn't have said that. And I could tell that some of the people in our office, well, it would have been like, if this guy wasn't the boss, I would have like given him a dead arm or something, right?
Yeah.
So I fronted up to the team the next day and I said, you know what, guys? That is not on. It is not good enough that I would ever speak that way. And for that, I'm going to punish myself. And I want you to know, and I'm apologizing publicly to people that weren't even there. So they were like, what the fuck's happened? But it was important to me because if I didn't do it, the next person would never do it. And so for me, it was like, I need to embody the values that I should. And we had a woman by the name of Andrea Clark once appear on our podcast, and she said, like, if you think about it, you might have a assessment of yourself that says something about you. Really, what only matters is what other people think about who you are and your team. Like, what I mean by that is, like she said, if you weren't in the room, what are the 3 words that someone would use to describe who you are, right? And if you think about that, and you think about a business, what are the 3 words that people would describe, how they would describe our business or our products or our service offering? Because that's what you need to do. Because as your community evolves, you lose control of it as the founder. You're not able to be everywhere. Like if you walk out there in the Grey Space office and you've got like an amazing team, you need to know that if they're on the phone to someone, that they're upholding your values.
Yeah, for sure.
You know? And so one thing I always do is I always drop into the work. I never go far enough away from the work and like the day-to-day customer support, the comms with our partners. Like I never go far enough away that I am not understanding what's happening. And good or bad, you kind of have to live the values because every layer that goes out is another layer where the community's brand can be diluted.
I couldn't agree more. And it's something that I've started to do as well. It's just to keep the finger on the pulse of what's going on. Not necessarily out in the bullpen, but just across the business. I mean, I think accountability is such a big thing, which you've displayed so well in doing that and making that comment, whatever it was, and then coming and saying to everyone, hey, look, that's not on.
Yeah.
Like that's huge. I think accountability is so big as well as the business continues to scale and our values can get diluted because there's so many more people. Sometimes, well, I know I do it where I just think that other person knows what I expect.
Yeah.
But it's just not the case.
Yeah. Well, you guys do a really good job here because you automate a lot. So technology can solve a lot of like frustrating problems or issues that may arise because of variability in the outcome or the brand perception. But you guys automate a lot, which gives you certainty that the outcome for the next client is going to be similar to the last one.
Yeah.
It's when you don't have systems, it's when you don't have strategy days, you can't really scale.
Yeah.
Because there'll be more issues than there are successes.
Yeah, exactly. It's been pressure tested, but it's so true. I think values is something that a lot of people maybe won't do in business because it's sort of fluffy and it's like, what does it even mean? But at the start, I thought the same. But now that we have team members and we're growing, and I'm sure it's the same at Rask, it's just so important. It's so important when we're not there. Like you've been in Sydney for a day or two, but the team knows what your expectations are.
Yeah, and they're all amazing people, so I'm very fortunate with that. But yeah, I mean, so Sam Huppert, who is the co-founder and CEO of Pro Medicus, which is probably like, shout out to Sam, I own shares in the company. It's the greatest investment I've ever made. Maybe like there's a few other things like my wife, my family, my
financial,
my company, but like in terms of stocks, this thing's like unbelievable. So yeah, he once said to me that don't hire many people, just hire good people.
Yeah.
And it takes away so many of the issues that you might have. And yeah, I'm continuously surprised by the benefit of hiring amazing people. Sometimes you don't have the benefit of that, to be fair. Like it is challenging, but you've still got to try. But yeah, like I'm pretty sure that if I logged onto Intercom right now and saw what people were saying, I don't know if I've got my phones on Do Not Disturb, but if I logged on there right now and saw what people are saying, I would be like, I'm very confident that there would be nothing at all that I would do differently.
Yeah, for sure. So you've been growing the Rask community online now for several years. How has digital marketing and the community building changed over that time?
So we started with lot of SEO and a lot of good things like that. Like we started with writing articles and ranking really highly in Google. And then we used that to fuel podcasts. One of the things I haven't said is like, I'm old enough to know that Facebook used to be like an amazing thing for content creators. Back in the day, you could create an amazing business in Facebook's backyard. I remember, I'm old enough to remember that around the time that they have their IPO, which was when they went from a private company held by Zuckerberg and associates to a public company held by probably hundreds of thousands of shareholders, they basically had to put their big boy pants on. And one of the things that they did was they went from saying, here's the maximum amount of value for the creators in our ecosystem. We'll let you create groups and pages and talk to your audience, to here's the maximum amount of ads that we can put in front of your community. And if you post something, maybe 10% of your audience sees it. And that was a huge lesson to me, that don't build your business in someone else's backyard. Like, obvious, right? And like you see that with like franchise business models. So this is not a social media or marketing thing. A lot of franchise owners, regrettably, don't have full control over their destiny. And so building your business in someone else's backyard is both a physical thing and an actual digital thing. And so we started with SEO, collected email addresses, followed permission marketing principles like Seth Godin, and then you mentioned Cialdini. Cialdini's principle of commitment and consistency is easily the biggest driver of our success. And the commitment and consistency is basically this principle. If you do an action, you're more likely to follow an action that reaffirms that first action. So if, for example, you subscribe to a Rask newsletter, you're then more likely to listen to a Rask podcast. And because you listen to a Rask podcast, you're more likely to use a Rask financial advisor. And because you use a Rask financial advisor, you're more likely to do whatever X comes next, right? And so that idea of commitment and consistency, coupled with other persuasive techniques like authority, which was already established, social proof, coming to our events, seeing other people that look like you or don't, and seeing that it's not just one big Ponzi scheme like you see with all those spruikers. It's actually a real community. You see those things shift, but the medium changes. So like those things might be consistent. They shift a little bit depending on the medium. But what does change is like the way we deliver content and marketing. So like now we're listening to a podcast, which is the Australian Business Podcast. This was the third or fourth podcast. The first one was the Australian Investors Podcast. Then we realized that was way too technical for the average person to digest. So we went into the Australian Finance Podcast. Now that's our biggest show. I think it was the Australian Business Podcast.
It was.
Yes.
Because we discussed the fourth one.
Oh, really?
Yeah, in person.
The Australian Property Podcast, which I still owe some money for purchasing that one. Still underwater. That's okay. And then the Australian Retirement Podcast, which has kind of rounded out our suite. But if you think about that, like one thing that hasn't changed is like with an email marketing list, you can pick up or you can export your MailChimp data, drag it and drop it into ActiveCampaign or to Klaviyo or to HubSpot, and you own your audience. It doesn't really matter. Once you've set it up, it doesn't matter. You just change. But you can't do that with a social media following. You can't just be like, all right, everyone on TikTok, 50,000 of you guys, I'm going to export that and we're going to go meet on Instagram. That's not the way it works. And by then, like, who knows what's happened. So with podcasts, the podcasts are an RSS feed, which is like old school technology. But basically, the reason that we move so heavily into podcasts is that we could take the file, the MP3 or the WAV file that we export from the recording device, drop it into our podcast host, and then all of the different players like Apple Podcasts, YouTube, Spotify, they all just pull on that same feed. So if we wanted to, we could not use that host and then shift to another podcast host, but keep our audience. Or if Apple did something stupid, at least it's Spotify. And so being in control of that has been amazing, but the actual ideas and the trust and the values and the level of content quality has not changed.
Cool. What's the first thing a new founder should do if they want to build a community around their brand?
The easiest way to do it, and we spoke to Hardy in the community about this. He, fantastic lawyer, shout out to Hardy. This is the Inflection community. We spoke to him because he asked a really good question a little while ago. He spoke about, like, should I put my face on my website? And I said, man, you should probably put your face on your website if you want to grow to, like, from A to B. But if you want to become the world's biggest law firm or whatever, maybe don't do that. It will be harder. But if you're in an industry where you're listening to this and you're like, I'm in a kind of trust industry, like I have to, obviously get trust to get the customer. So maybe if you're selling gelato, you probably don't need to worry about that too much. Just have really good gelato and branding and you'll be all right. But if you're in a service-based industry, I'd say the easiest way is to build personal trust through videos, through maybe podcasts, through community events, these types of things. That is how I would start, and keep the snowball moving and seek to diversify after a little while. So I'm a big believer in that focus is important. Like, you should try and win at something. Like, you guys are winning at accounting, right?
Sometimes.
It might feel a bit different sometimes. Yeah. But win at that and then go into the other thing.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I would just say diversify once you get to a point where you've got enough inertia, because if something was to happen with email marketing or AI was to come along and just be like, oh, so that thing you call Google? Wow. Old news. Fascinating point, actually. Because our Google rankings are so good, we now get approximately 10 to 20% of our course enrollments come directly from ChatGPT, who recommend our courses.
Really?
Yeah, which it's just like a whole thing.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's huge.
Yeah. So I was like, all right, it's Armageddon for SEO. We're out.
Actually, hang on a minute.
Yeah. Hold on. This is write some good blog posts because ChatGPT is going to pick it up. So yeah, it's been really surprising, actually. Yeah.
It's interesting. Is that on the back of the deep research models that they're all releasing? Because they're starting to go through, post all of the articles or the, what's the right word? Like the references that
yeah, so you can now click the sources and stuff and you can see them in there.
Yeah.
It's going to be an interesting, I don't know, like we don't have time to riff on this for a few days, but I'm happy to come back. I think what's going to be really interesting is the AI models are actually a one-sided platform, which don't really tend to work at scale. What I mean by that is, like, if you go into Google search, Google facilitates the user and primarily a business or like a government website or something. So there's two sides to the platform and Google just intermediates that. But with AI models, effectively, because it's not a search engine, it's an answer engine, effectively you could go there and never go anywhere else.
Yep.
And small businesses probably won't win, is the kind of inference I have. So I don't know how that would work at scale. I don't think it's going to create a thriving environment. So we'll check back in like late February 2026 if there's any updated views on that. But yeah, that was pretty reassured by those search results.
Yeah, cool. No, that's awesome. I think we need to do a part 2.
Yeah, I think we do. Especially after I didn't hit record. So we've done the second 35 minutes is similar to the first 35 minutes.
Yeah, I think we'll definitely do a part 2 maybe next week or the week after. I think I'm coming down to Melbourne. So
perfect. Let's do it then. Let's rekindle this. And for anyone that's listening, you can get some more rants and whatever else comes next.
That's it. Good stuff.
Great. Thanks for having me, mate.
Thanks, mate.
Thanks for watching this video on the Rask Network. While you're here, don't forget to like and subscribe so you can get videos each and every day on business, finance, investing, and so much more.